All right, you guys hear that? Tick, tock. That's the sound of summer vacation approaching. Summer vacay calling. At least this guy over here. It's approaching quickly. Like Josh Sweat on a quarterback, Buda Baker shooting his gun for a TFL, James Conner lowering the pads and lowering the boom, hashtag cram it vertical. There's an old saying when it comes to summer vacation. You guys ready for this?
So ready.
I know you guys don't know the meaning of the word old, but I'm about to demonstrate here with a prop. You can't pour from an empty cup. Notice this isn't just any cup right here. This is vintage Cardinals souvenir. Someone I know in their garage have been keeping these since 1988. An original Phoenix Cardinals glass.
Nice.
This also older than both of you. As we say, welcome into Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation. Once again, you can't pour from an empty cup. As summer vacation is vital, critical, it is necessary.
You say summer vacation is approaching. It's already started for Darren Urban, who's not even here with us today.
He picked up that call early and ran out of here.
There's still skid marks in the parking lot where Darren left on summer vacation. Let's put it that way. Zach, are you up to the task? Did Darren give you any, value-added advice as to how the best way in which to fill in?
No, because I don't feel like there's any way to replace Darren Urban.
Oh, good one. That's a good save.
But that is because he's my supervisor.
He left without helping you in any way.
Well,
that's a good save.
Yes, he did invite me to the rundown first, and then he left. So I guess he kind of just brought me to the line and said, "Now, are you going to run through it or not?"
Baptism by fire.
Time to go run through it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What is Darren? What's his vacation of choice? Because you know what my best vacation is. Thanks for asking. The 6 S's. You know what that is? Surf, sun, sand. As I try and remember my own saying. Surf, sun, sand. Suds, seafood, sourdough. There you go.
Not
the 6
sleep.
S's. The 6 S's.
That's
a
no
good
sleep.
One. That actually is a good one. You're right. Back when I was doing morning radio, sleep would have been number 7.
But if you're enjoying the first 6, maybe the
There's
sleep is not what's happening.
No time for sleep.
That's right.
Darren is on vacation where I believe as of today, maybe Monday afternoon, he doesn't have Wi-Fi. So we can say whatever we want about him, and it's going to take him a couple days before he hears.
We know, too, he's like thinking about how we're starting this podcast. He's waiting to see how you open this. So hopefully it meets his expectations.
Like the Florida Panthers, that just lit the lamp. So there we go. Addition by subtraction.
Darren
No
gets
Darren
to
Urban.
light the lamp. Oh, I was going to say Darren gets to light the lamp and he's not here, but we're lighting the lamp because Darren isn't here.
Yes.
Interesting.
Or an honor. But if he asks, it's an honor that Darren isn't here, but really it's because he isn't here. Okay, so there we go. Getting cultured coming up. Danny has that handled. Winning behavior. See if you can keep up on that one, Zach. There may or may not be the power poll of incompetence. Just, it appears when necessary, as mandated by current events. Because remember, reality is the best comedy. Hence, the power poll of incompetence is coming up. Here's my question to the two of you. T-minus 1 month and counting until Cardinals camp. If there's 1, maybe 2, I'll go as far as 3 questions that you want answered by the end of camp. Where would you start? If you're Jonathan Gannon, if you're Monty Osiport, what is the biggest question that you must have by the time camp breaks?
I think for me, it's going to be how does the defensive line look once they finally have the pads on? We talk so much about the reinforcements that have come into the room. Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson. You're going to get Darius Robinson fully healthy going into this offseason. We saw how good he looked in the pads. What is he going to look like? What is that defensive line room going to look like once they have the pads on? Is there going to be some chippiness? That's going to be my question 1A, I guess is what I'll say, because we saw last year that there was some chippiness. While fighting is a non-negotiable for JG, I think it does set the tempo for camp.
That is a great first question, especially because that was the response, what we were getting mostly from coaches throughout OTAs and mandatory minicamp is they can only say because they can only know so much without pads and without true contact. So once training camp starts and you're able to have a little contact between the offensive lineman and the defensive lineman, that's going to be very telling. Another question for me is more specific. Cornerback Will Johnson as a rookie. There are high expectations, fair or not. Second round pick. He was mocked in pretty much every draft as a first round pick. Is what can you get out of him? Throughout mandatory minicamp, we saw Johnson in a limited fashion. He was dealing with a tight hamstring, according to Gannon. So physically, where is his health lie? And then what can you get out of a rookie? Because the Cardinals are not going to have veteran Sean Murphy-Bunting all season. He's on the NFI list. So you have Starling Thomas and you have Max Melton. And is it their starting roles to lose to Johnson? And if so, the battle between the two of them opposite. So there's questions around the cornerbacks room, but it's a big question of Johnson. And what do you have from him, not just health-wise, but what can he physically give you week one? Is that standard there? Is it possible for him to be a starter week one?
I would say that's a definitive yes. If he is indeed healthy, he can absolutely be a 17-game starter. And I'm basing that on the team you're going to see in joint practice. Patrick Surtain II, your NFL Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie, started every single game. Sauce Gardner as a rookie, started every single game. Derek Stingley of Houston, as soon as he was healthy, he started every single game. So if Will Johnson is that guy, and many believe, including the Cardinals, that he has the talent to be that guy. And if it was only Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter who plummeted his draft stock by reporting that longevity concerns existed, not to say those aren't legitimate among other teams, but if the Cardinals are getting different medical reports, and if they don't necessarily care about the second contract, if he's healthy to go right here, right now, and forget about his longevity and his football future, what can you do for us right here, right now? Yeah, I would answer your question with a double thumbs up. I say he's definitely in the mix to be cornerback one.
There's a reason why he was ranked a top 5, top 10 talent before the injury was even in discussions. You look back to some of the early mock drafts, and by early mock drafts, I'm talking about the day after Marvin Harrison Jr. and Darius Robinson were selected in the first round. That's how early these mock drafts were projecting Will Johnson to go in the first round. But I think, when we talk about cornerback one, is that going to be Will Johnson? Could he be cornerback two? Could he be on the other side of the field? Which wide receiver is he going to be lining up across? I'm more interested in what Starling Thomas's jump is going to look like, what Max Melton's year 1 to year 2 jump is going to look like. How did those starts for Max Melton? Because when Sean Murphy-Bunting was having his neck injury, it was Starling Thomas and Max Melton earning a lot of starting reps. What did those starting reps do for a guy like Max Melton?
All right, other camp questions. I would start with middle linebacker. I want to know who's the quarterback of the defense. I want to know who's calling the defense. I want to know if Cody Simon is a legitimate possibility. The guy who just got better as last season unfolded for the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Guy who was a defensive MVP in the Rose Bowl and then in the national championship game. Can he really process and call a defense at the NFL level as a rookie? No small thing. We had Lorenzo Alexander this weekend on the Red Sea Report. And he says not necessarily getting out the initial call. It's reacting to what the offense is doing. It's making the checks, the audibles, the adjustments, being able to see it, recognize it, spit it out, get all 11, coordinated and in sync. That's no small thing when you have Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay in your division, and they're purposely going to come out there and try and mess with whoever's calling the defense. So I would say that's my biggest question. After that, I want to know how guard is going to shake out in this offensive line. Is Isaiah Adams really the guy? Looks good, sounds more confident, says he's heavier, says he's much stronger. Okay, that seems to check every box. How's he doing the first O-line, D-line drill when he's lined up against Dalvin Tomlinson? That's what I want to know.
Well, Paul, you sat down with Isaiah. Did you get that confidence that he's ready for this?
Definitely based more on last year. I think last year was, and he's a highly intelligent guy. So okay, I'm figuring this out. This year there's more of an error. Okay, I know what it takes, and I've prepared accordingly. And you know what? Of all the reports we got, because he started the last 5 games, and I had a chance to talk to a number of coaches, they loved his technique. They loved the football IQ. He just needed to get stronger. And you know what? That's controllable. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's out there getting schooled. So, okay, if you can get stronger and you spent the offseason in the squat rack, and all of a sudden when somebody's trying to bull rush you or come through you and you're more equipped to be stout on the interior, okay, I think he'll be given every single opportunity to win that job.
That was an interesting question brought up in the mailbag this week, actually, because I was filling in for Darren, so I got to answer the questions. And that was a question which was a good one. It was asking, about the draft, that time of year, and how so many analysts and mock drafts had the Cardinals taking an interior offensive lineman, a guard. Specifically, right guard has been in mind because Will Hernandez, the starter last year, remains a free agent, and he missed most of last season due to injury, which is why Adams filled in. And the question was everybody off base for thinking that was a need when it wasn't really addressed in the offseason? And my answer was no, it wasn't off base. That is absolutely a fair position room that you want to have your eye on, specifically right guard, because does Adams have enough to be ready to be the starter in his second year in the league? He played, 15 games, I believe, last year, 5 of those starts. There was just that rotation with Tristan Colon for majority of the season. Do you have enough in Adams? And it can be twofold of, yes, you feel ready enough, but I also think that defense was such a priority this offseason. This time last year, it was the offense. It was time for the defense to be revamped. And if you feel strongly enough in your offensive lineman, I'm not saying that, you're just content and you don't want to be great, but if you feel strongly enough in the pieces you have, there were other priorities really on defense, that defensive line, right? Bolstering up the secondary and the outside linebackers room, that was more of a priority. That would not have been the case if this front office and this coaching staff did not feel strongly about what they had in the offensive line room, especially with the veterans they did still bring in. It is going to be competition. It is Adams' job to lose. That's not a spot where it's 50-50. Is it going to be Royce Newman? Is it someone they brought in? That is Adams' position to lose.
I don't know when the first day of pads is exactly, because I know the training camp schedule came out. Basically, it's usually the 5th, maybe the 6th day of camp. That's the way it is per the CBA. I personally feel like the first day in pads should be a state holiday. I've yet to get that ratified as of yet, but I'm guessing that when they have the first O-line, D-line drill, full pads, full contact, full go, you're going to have every single decision maker standing over there watching Isaiah Adams. How does he fare? How does he hold up against DT? See, I'm already calling Dalvin Tomlinson DT. How about that?
Your boy's with him like that.
Forget about Diana Taurasi. It's not, the new DT is Dalvin Tomlinson. And then you have Calais Campbell and the Walter Nolan and the lateral quickness, right? That's his middle name, by the way, at this point. And of course, Darius Robinson. So, okay, how does he hold up? Because how many roster spots are still available? There is one, correct? Kind of conspicuous by the fact that box hasn't been checked. Is that maybe an offensive lineman to be named later?
Potentially. We see that when training camp comes around, there are a lot of pieces that are brought in because then you have a lot of the staffs that have their first look at the talent that they actually have in the building. So we saw that there were tryouts reported that the Cardinals had last year at edge rusher positions after B.J. Ojulari went down with his injury. Look, we know that the roster spot is open, and with Valentin Sentu, who you're likely going to peg as the international player, so he'll be an additional player. If he somehow makes it to the roster, he won't be charged against the 53. Otherwise, it's going to be the practice squad. He gets to be the 17th player that goes out there. It's definitely something that I think Monty Ossenfor and the pro scouting department are going to be looking at. I do think, though, that you have a lot of depth at that interior offensive line because you have John Gaines, you have Royce Newman, Jake Curhan, you drafted Hayden Connor in the 6th round. You want to be able to see what you have from your interior depth. But I do think that if you're Monty and you see what you have at first glance in that first week when they do put on the pads, and you're saying, all right, I think we could add another piece, it wouldn't surprise me if that option's an offensive lineman.
Teams are going to start making cuts throughout training camp. And once you get the pads on, you get a better feel. That's when you're going to be able to say, okay, you know what? To see Adams go up against a Tomlinson, against a Calais Campbell, against a healthy Darius Robinson, maybe we need to readjust, and they can go and they can look who's out there still as a free agent. They can look into maybe a trade option for someone. It still feels too soon. You have to go out and you have to see what Adams can bring you after this first full off season, if he's been talking about adding some strength and seeing what he's really capable of when the pads come on. Longtime
Cardinal fans will remember. It was in 1988. I don't remember what year it was, but it was early in camp. They had a young center. It wasn't going well. And then they got on the phone. They brought in Lyle Senline. They said, Lyle, get out of retirement. Come on back. And boom. So to your point, Zach, right? I mean, they'll take a look early in camp and just say, all right, what do we have? What do we possibly need? And it's that first practice in pads. Because remember, you can't win a job. You can lose a job if it's an abject disaster. So there's that. Now, other big camp questions, at least for me, wide receiver 2. Is there one? Will it be wide receiver 2 by committee this year? Or is someone going to step up and grab that spot and get the vast majority of those targets? I think that's up for grabs. And then the one I'll throw in there sort of on the fringes, right tackle. Where exactly is Jonah Williams? Don't know. And if not, is it Christian Jones? Who else might it be?
Or is it Kelvin Beachum?
Kelvin Beachum?
If all things considered, if Jonah Williams is healthy, if he is fully healthy, and we did see him in a limited capacity throughout off-season programs, so that leads you to believe that he is on the right path. We'll have a better idea with training camp and getting injury updates at that point from Gannon. If Williams is fully healthy and you want him as your starting right tackle, which the Cardinals did this time last year when they brought him in as a free agent, do you keep 2 swing tackles on the 53-man roster in Christian Jones and Kelvin Beachum? Jones did not see a lot of playing time last year as a rookie. They kept him on the roster because they didn't want to lose him. Do you feel like he has improved enough to beat out a 14-year veteran in Beach?
Because remember, there are 28 draft picks from the last 3 years. And this just in, people, not every one of them is going to make the final 53.
That's fair. I think
there will be blood this year. Someone's going.
Someone will go. I do think, too, when you think about Christian Jones, he did begin the season, though, on the injured reserve, so he didn't get charged against the 53 at that moment. So you were able to have other different players because of how the NFL has set it up now, that you have the season-ending injured reserve and then the non-season-ending injured reserve. It was the same situation for Elijah Jones last year, who they activated at a certain point, at least open up his window, and then they didn't bring him onto the 53. They let it close just to give him some reps and, whatever else happened along the way as to why he wasn't able to get on the field. But when we think about this 53, now the conversation about do you have 2 swing tackles on the roster, that now changes because Christian Jones was initially not charged against that 53. It was Kelvin Beachum's spot, and we saw Kelvin Beachum a lot earlier than I think any of us expected to see him.
And basically, Kelvin Beachum, no joke, no cap, as you guys might say.
Ooh, no cap.
Could play every single spot on the line if needed.
There have been years where he almost has.
Yes. So,
with the exception of center in the last couple of years.
Was it last year or the year before?
It was the year before.
Year before he played, he had to fill in a left tackle. I remember going up in the locker room, it was like week 14. Hey, Beach, refresh my memory. You've started a few games of left tackle, right? Kind of gives you that look. 6 years. Okay, so 6 straight years of starting left tackle. Oh, yeah, I forgot, Mr. Beach. Sorry about that. I'll be on my way.
Does that land on the Power Poll of Incompetence?
Yes, as a media member, when I easily could have checked the website and just checked, but he was standing there. I figured I'd go right to the source.
It's just my subtle reminder to you.
I undermined my own credibility in that moment, so there's no doubt. I was honorable mention Power Poll of Incompetence that week.
Self-awareness, though, is very important. So good on you, Paul.
Yeah. Okay, Kyler, self-awareness. He said it, the word prime. He's in his prime. And he said, if prime Kyler, he was asked, what does that look like? And what did he say? Rings? Yeah. Did he say MVP or not? Once again, I should have checked this. I'm risking ending up on my own Power Poll of Ineptitude right now. He said rings. He didn't say MVP.
Well, he said ring first and then correct himself and said rings, multiple. And I think that shows just how he doesn't want to settle. And we know Kyler Murray before, the NFL is a completely different beast, but we know his winning history from his time in high school and then in Oklahoma and winning the Heisman and being top 10 in literally everything that he seems to have done in his life. And there have been challenges along the way. Obviously, he has the ACL injury. He comes back in 2023, completely new regime. A lot has changed, but he says now he feels that he's in his prime, and the second full year post ACL operation is the one that you're supposed to feel the most comfortable with, the best, the most like prior to the injury. What does that mean? One of the questions I have is Kyler Murray running? Is that something that's just being all talk? Is that actually something of substance? Or is it just going to be like last year where he's going to run when he needs to?
Those are fair questions. But honestly, what else would you want to hear from a quarterback going into year 7? That's what I want to hear, that you feel like you're going into your prime, which is timed up nicely with the weapons that have been brought in around him, the consistency in the offense, the consistency and the strength of an offensive line who has blocked for a 1,000-yard rusher back-to-back seasons in James Conner. So this is what you want to hear. Now is the time because you have the pieces around you. You have a very talented quarterback who is a dual threat with his arm and his legs, and you have the consistency with the players and the play caller and offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. So if I'm going to hear my quarterback talk about, as a fan, like I'm in my prime, this is the best time. Now is the time to put pen to paper and to go out and really start stringing along some wins.
By the way, NFL.com picked up on those quotes. They ran a little story on the league website. But they did add one stat I had not seen, and it was analytics, and it was rushing yards over expected. I have no idea how to explain that. All I know is that Kyler was number one in the NFL when he did run it last year. But in those situations, they said he was sixth in the league in terms of rushing attempts, designed rushing attempts by a quarterback. Number one was Lamar Jackson, 70-something. Kyler had 20-something. Daniel Jones had more designed rushing attempts than Kyler. So when he talks about, and for the most part he's talked about off schedule, but he has talked about running the ball more. And it does sound like he sat around watching the AFC playoffs and something went off in his head and he said, wait a minute, look at Lamar Jackson, look at Josh Allen, look at Patrick Mahomes holding these defenses accountable, making big plays in big moments with their legs. I do think we're going to see it. We're not going to see 2020 when he had over 800 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns, I don't think, but we're going to see more rushing yards this year.
That's not what Murray wants. He has said before he doesn't want to play hero ball. He doesn't want to scramble and run around the way he did, although incredible, in Vegas against the Raiders when he was 21 seconds he was running with the ball,
Yes.
whatever that
Yeah.
outrageous number was. So it would make sense. You want to take advantage of the skill set that your players have, right? You want to tailor fit your scheme to what your players can add value to. And that is something that Murray adds value to. Every defense, whoever the opponent is every week faces the Cardinals, they are talking about the challenge it is to face a quarterback, not even a quarterback like Murray, but Murray himself. So it would be good for the Cardinals to take advantage of that, especially when we've heard from other players, right? We've heard from, Petzing, we've heard from tight end Trey McBride about this offense not being as vanilla. Going into year 3, you're able to add a little more sauce, right? A little more motion. If you can continue to elevate this offense, that could very well be a key component of that.
To drop some more stats for you, though, Paul, I went
Here we
back
go.
and on True Media, they have Kyler Murray's rushing numbers by yards and distance, what he's kind of around. And on first down, for when it's 1 to 2 yards, 3 to 6 yards, 0 rushes. From 7 to 10 yards, 34 of his rushes this past season, 262 yards. Also, second down, 7 to 10 yards, 10 rushes, 61 yards. Not a single rush beyond that at any other yard to distance had more than 6 total rushes. So clearly when the yards are 7 to 10 yards, he sees that he needs to go rush down the field, try to get a first down, whether that's because it's early on in the down and he's able to extend some plays. That is when we see Kyler Murray rushing. You don't necessarily see him as it's late in the down because normally he's trying to look down the field. Early and often, he's looking to rush it himself and to take it for a first down.
So I'm not sure I totally followed that, and that's not surprising
Let's break
because
it
of my
down.
nominal knowledge when it comes to numbers, okay?
You don't know this, Zach, but on Cardinals Underground, we don't do math.
He brought
Okay.
up stats. I got excited.
No.
I sent this to
Well-
Craig Grelu because he was asking, and I was like, you know what? We have it here in the inbox.
You got excited and enthused. I usually get confused. So this could be what I do best. I'm going to ask the dumb guy question. The second play from scrimmage, week 4 in Santa Clara, where it was 111 degrees, Kyler Murray ripped it for a 50-yard touchdown run. Where does that fit in that scenario?
See, if you're going to make me do that, then I'm going to have to actually go break it down into
No,
it and watch
we
the
don't
film.
know.
However,
We're doing a podcast here,
Please
Paul.
no.
However,
This isn't a lecture.
This is just a screenshot. But out of Kyler Murray's 78 total rushes, 44 of them came on first or second down when it was 7 to 10 yards.
Okay.
My point being, when the cornerbacks, when it's passing downs, which the Cardinals seem to have done early on in possessions, when it's first down and second down, Kyler Murray has had no problems ripping it and running himself.
No, it's good. It's good. And to your point, Danny, he may not necessarily enjoy it all the time, but maybe the epiphany or the realization this offseason is it's necessary. That if he wants to be at his best, his most lethal, to really keep defensive coordinators up at night, to really elevate this team and take the offense to the next level, guess what? He runs a 4-3. He probably needs to flex that and show that and utilize that more often.
There's 2 players every opponent talks about defending when they play the Cardinals. On offense, it's Kyler Murray, and on defense, it's safety Budda Baker.
Yep.
Week in and week out.
All right, here's 4 other quick areas where I think Kyler can get better this year. Calvisi Consulting, the Paulie Pigskin division, giving free advice to $50 million a year quarterbacks. Who's for it? Here we go. Number 1, improve the efficiency on his deep pass. Return to where he was early in his career when he was among the league leaders, if not number 1, when it comes to completing the deep pass. Number 2, throw wide receivers open with greater frequency. Yeah, he's covered. He's sort of covered. You know what? I'm going to throw it where only my receiver can get it. Which brings us to number 3, chemistry with receivers other than Trey McBride. Try and forge and generate that sort of chemistry where you just intrinsically know where the guy's going to be at what time, and when someone's bearing down on you, you can get rid of the ball and throw it to the spot because you trust your guy's going to be there. Number 4 was about the legs and rushing. We already talked about that. So the new number 4 is passing under pressure, meaning the pressure of pass rushers. And there was a stat, Next Gen Stats. I see your stat, and I up your stat over here, Zach. Week 12, 13, and 14, when Kyler was under pressure, didn't go so well. When under pressure, 0 touchdown passes, 5 picks. So when under pressure, and hopefully that doesn't happen too often if you've bolstered the offensive line, you got plenty of other weapons to keep a defense honest. You know, sometimes, Lorenzo Alexander talked about this on the Red Sea Report, the MVP play that he said Josh Allen has learned beyond anything else because he played with a young Josh Allen in Buffalo is don't try and make the play. Throw it away. Live for the next play. And so how many of those interceptions coming out of the bye, and there were 8 of them in the final 7 games, how many of those can they attribute to trying to do too much?
I think of Seattle at home, week 14 last year, under pressure, those interceptions. There was one, it was the safety or linebacker in the middle field that turned around that Murray didn't see. And then there was also a pick 6. Wasn't it also that same game where it went over Michael Wilson's head along the sideline?
The pick 6
but they
was
were both
at Seattle.
That was at Seattle.
Okay,
Kobe
but the other
Bryant,
one, week 14 was at home, but both under pressure.
Yep.
Those are the first things that come to my mind when you're talking about that, Paul.
And I think also to the game against Minnesota where Kyler threw it deep when he could have just thrown it away, and it goes, it goes into
end the game.
Yeah, and it goes into an interception into that column. Look, there's a lot of ways where I think Kyler could be trying to throw it to a spot only his receivers could get, but when it is just that, when the margin of error is that slim, it could be very risky.
All right, I would tell Zach to buckle up, but I have a feeling he's going to fare a lot better than yours truly in this next particular edition here of Getting Cultured. Dani, we'll segue to you.
Getting Cultured with Dani. It is not just directed at Paul.
Am I the default uncultured Philistine around here?
Yes.
You got me very excited now.
I am on social media and consume more pop culture than both of you combined.
I think I'm being unfairly profiled, but go ahead.
Let's go. Usually the person sitting to my left is not as cultured as he is today. So you've already got a leg up over there, Zach.
I am so ready for this, but then again, now I get to actually test how cultured I really am.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to live up to that scouting report. Let's see.
First on the list, I am taking advantage of Darren Urban not being here, which means we're talking Love Island.
See, I'm done.
No. Oh, no.
I'm done, Paul.
So Love Island, for those of you who don't
man.
know, which most of you probably do not, there's a lot. There are 5 episodes a week. So we're about, I think, 3 weeks in. So there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm not going to bore you guys with that. I will just tell you within the last couple of days, America did have their first vote of the men and women in the villa in Fiji that they wanted to keep, right? They had the bottom 3 men, the bottom 3 women of their favorites. Then the contestants that were already safe had to choose to vote out 1 male and 1 female, and they did a horrible job. They sent home the wrong girl, they sent home the wrong boy. People are up in arms over it.
By saying that they said, does that mean that they're a good match? Or like were they together or?
Some of them were in couples.
See, Paul,
yes.
I told you.
Some of them were in couples, but they voted them out as individuals, not as couples. So they split up a couple, 2 couples actually. So now we're at the point of this is huge because now we're at the point of Love Island where we now have Casa Amor. So essentially. Let me answer the questions going through your head, Paul. Essentially, there is a second villa, and all the women go to this other villa. They are no longer coupled up with the guys. They don't see them. They don't speak to them. They bring in new women to speak with the original men, and they bring in new men to speak with the original women. And the whole idea is to test your relationship and how strong it is, and if you want to stay with them when you guys reunite or get to meet other people. But the point of this is saying, I'm really disappointed in some of the males and honestly the females of how they're behaving. Like, it just hasn't been a great season. It feels like some of the decisions are people just trying to win the money or to try to recreate the fame that was last season. People are not happy with how Casa Amor has started.
Zach,
so when you sit down at the dinner table,
Yeah.
Paul, you can talk to your kids about this.
Let me make sure. You know what? I should confirm tonight that they're not watching this based on what I'm hearing, okay?
Wait, there's money involved? I thought this was all about finding love.
Both. You have three couples in the final. The winning couple gets $100,000.
Okay, I have one.
It's about
actual,
finding TV ratings and subs.
That is very fair, which is why Casa Amor now exists.
Right.
Hold on a second. What does Meg the Stallion have to do with this?
Oh, that was a great episode.
'Cause I saw this on Twitter.
She was a guest host, so she came in and she
There's
hosted.
host? How? This is about love.
Because last season was so successful, they had it in the budget to bring in one of the most well-known rappers, and Meg the Stallion hosted a competition. It was a lot of fun. Next on the list, this one is just for you, Paul. And I actually had this on my Getting Culture list before we started the podcast when you were talking about it.
By the way, a quick aside, my Italian grandfather used to pour red wine into his coffee. He called it Coffee Royale. I could use some of that right now. Go ahead.
Bring out the Power Poll of Ineptitude, Paul. Red Lobster is making headway.
Oh, no.
There
no.
is now, yes. So for those of you who don't know, Red Lobster has found itself on Paul's Power Poll of Ineptitude after the former CEO had endless shrimp, and it was so endless that it led them to filing for bankruptcy. So the
Wrote
new
it
CEO
right into bankruptcy.
is making changes. One of those changes is a Red Lobster seafood boil coming in a bag. You get Maine lobster tail, a dozen shrimps, no crab legs, corn, and red potatoes. I've never even had Red Lobster, but I sound like their biggest fan because I'm just cheering for them on your Power Poll of Ineptitude.
Well, if Ron Wolfley was here right now, yes, Red Lobster was one of his guilty pleasures. He'd be giving the whole fist bump right there. You know, he'd be fired up for new and exciting news regarding Red Lobster.
It's like you're striking somebody out there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can either punch or you can pull when you're calling as an umpire. I pull. That's how that works. That's how that works.
And that's all I've got. You've been cultured. You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this Love Island thing. I mean, it's. I heard an NBA insider. Go ahead.
There is one of these new. They call them bombshells. The people they bring in. One of these new male bombshells is actually from Scottsdale.
Okay.
So that's my tie.
So that's your. But wait, there's more. By the way, America really needs 5 nights a week of Love Island.
Well, there's actually a 6th night, but that I don't watch.
See?
That's like a round
Yeah.
table of
Well,
what
there
you
you
missed
go.
from the week. But I've told you this, Paul.
Yep.
What really grabs people in is it is real time. So what you're watching on a Tuesday night episode happened Monday night in Fiji.
Okay, I gotcha. All right,
Wow.
there you go. America never ceases to surprise the insatiable appetite for Love Island. All right, let's see if I can segue out of that. How much do the Cardinals need Josh Sweat this year? And I think that is a valid question, although I didn't put this question down on today's game plan. Does the question basically mean, okay, Josh Sweat, you think you know what he is. Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls are certainly know what he is. Are we certain what you're going to get out of Josh Sweat and how much? How much is necessary for A, the defense to excel, B, to win games, C, to get return on investment from $19 million a year? What says you, Zach, on how much is enough Josh Sweat?
That's a brand new bombshell entering the villa. Isn't that where the TikTok
There
sound
you go,
came from?
Zach gets
See,
it.
I get it there.
Well, actually, the sound, if you want to be, legit, is a hot new bombshell has entered the villa.
See, I was so close there. Hot sweat. That'll be the segue there. I just pulled a Paul Calvisi on Paul Calvisi.
Wow.
Look, with Josh Sweat, obviously the Cardinals have an idea of what they're going to get out of him because of his familiarity in Philadelphia. And I know Josh Sweat talked about how he loved playing the system because it just let him be free and they just let him go after the quarterback. But now he is the guy. And that is what I'm more interested in because he was in a rotation in Philadelphia. Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, a bunch of guys along that defensive front seven that allowed him to flourish. But I think back to the conversation you had with him, Paul, where he talked about, while yes, he did have a lot of other star talent, he still led all of them in a lot of statistical categories, especially in sacks. And in this case, you need a leading sack getter that isn't just in the middle of the pack with everybody else. You need somebody that is able to reach those double digits. And Philadelphia, he did that. Pro Bowl honors in 2021, double-digit sacks in 2022 as well. Look, if Josh Sweat could replicate his performance from the Super Bowl or from his time in Philadelphia with JG, the Cardinals are going to be very happy at the hot new bombshell that entered.
Sweat is more of a quietly
Go from hot new bombshell to then Sweat. Okay. All right. I'm trying to keep up here. Here we go.
Sweat has said himself he's not one of those rah-rah leaders in the locker room. He's much more introverted, lead by example. When players have questions, he's more than willing, but he's not a loud, outspoken leader. However, he is totally fine with being the, quote, centerpiece of this defense and his ability to handle that. He knows he's going to be the go-to pass rusher. He understands that, especially when there are other players in that room that are asked to do more, i.e. Zaven Collins, possibly Xavier Thomas this year, right? Dropping back into coverage. Like, there's players that are asked to do different things despite being in the same position room. Someone like Josh Sweat, though, who is so proven in his ability to be a disruptor, that's what you're going to want him to do. That's why Sweat was already talking about feeling like he has similar freedom here despite only practicing in the 3 mandatory minicamps that he felt when he was in Philadelphia with Gannon and defensive coordinator Nick Rawlis. That's what you want to hear, because Sweat had two of his statistically best years of his career when he was with Gannon and Rawlis in Philadelphia. For him to feel like he already has that freedom here tells me that they are on the same page to just let him rip and do his thing.
The freedom that I want to see from Josh Sweat, thanks for asking once again, isn't necessarily how he's used, it's how much he's used. We know Nick Rawls, Jonathan Gannon are all about rotations, keeping guys fresh, and the depth obviously is way beyond where it's been the last 2 years combined. So, all right, what does that mean exactly? You have numbers, but doesn't necessarily mean that's your best brand of football. I want to see Josh Sweat out there as often as he stinking wants to be out there. He's 6'5", 265. You don't realize how big the dude is until you're up next to him. And to hear Jonathan Gannon tell it, you know what? He sets a mean edge. So he's not a liability against the run. You know he can get after the quarterback. In other words, he's a three-down player. I liken it to when J.J. Watt first arrived with the Cardinals, and they had a lot of young guys in that room. Basically, J.J. Watt played as much as he could. And you know what? If he came to the sideline for a breather, he then inserted himself back into the game when he was ready to go. I'd love to see that from Josh Sweat. If the other guys rotate at the other edge position, great. But if Josh Sweat plays 2/3 to 3/4 of the snaps, I'm all for it.
The key to that is Watt was double-teamed a lot. He required a lot of attention from the offenses he was facing. If that's going to be the same with Sweat, you're going to have to make sure that the players opposite of him, whether that's someone on the defensive line, whether that's another outside linebacker, that they are taking advantage of having the advantage of a less, one less player going up against them on their side of the line.
I think the creative schemes will allow them to do a lot of different things with not just Josh Sweat, but with Zaven Collins and how they utilize him. You could potentially see a defensive scheme where you have Josh Sweat, Baron Browning, and Zaven Collins out on the field just because of how they use Zaven Collins in all these different positions. But then again, you don't make the biggest investment of Monty Austin-Ford's tenure in the free agency market in Josh Sweat to only have him play 50% of the snaps.
So if that's the case, when we're talking about, this offseason, if the number is going to be the same, where the Cardinals had 3 special teamers and then they had 25 on offense, 25 on defense, we're talking about maybe going from 6 to 7 defensive linemen. You're going to need that number to come from somewhere. Is it possible you take one less outside linebacker this year if you're not going to use as much of a rotation because you have someone like Sweat? Because that ups the competition greatly from players like rookie Jordan Birch and Xavier Thomas going into year 2, who we did not see a lot of his rookie year.
Mm-hmm. The 3 guys, the body types are really similar. Zaven Collins, Josh Sweat, Jordan Birch. They're all like 6'5", 265 to 275. Why am I envisioning Nick Rawlis scheming something diabolical up on 3rd and 11, and then he just has those 3 guys walking around the interior of the defensive line? Wait a minute, who's coming from where, and are you playing the 3 technique? Are you a wide 9? What exactly are you? And there's a lot of possibilities now that you have some guys with similar skill sets on that front. So, all right. So once again, the camp is going. Do we get an actual official date as to when camp is open? Let's just get the fundamentals out of the way here, Zach.
Yeah, so training camp opens up. There will be 9 open practices. The Cardinals, I believe, report on July 22nd, but the open practices begin at State Farm Stadium on July 24th. azcardinals.com has all the information, my articles on the main carousel, so you'll be able to check it out there. There's going to be an exclusive-only season ticket member, club seat member practice as part of Back Together Weekend. That'll be on Sunday, July 27th, and then on August 2nd will be the annual red-white practice, which will be exciting because that's always the day where the Bird Gang all comes together. That'll be on a Saturday, and that will lead into that first preseason game at home against the AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs.
And something to keep in mind, tickets are free, parking is free, but you do need a ticket to get in.
Digital tickets are required. You go to azcardinals.com to get them, azcardinals.com/camptix. TIX is how it's spelled. And then, you could also go on the Cardinals app.
I have a prediction. When it comes time for autographs after practice, you're going to hear the fans screaming for Kyler and Buddha and Marvin. But the loudest scream of all will be for Calais Campbell. I emceed an event here recently, tons of Cardinals fans, and I was talking about this and I was talking about that. I just mentioned Calais Campbell, and it was like a standing ovation. He's curating how people have responded to him coming back to the Cardinals. I'm guessing he can't even go out in public right now. First off, you can't hide anywhere when you're Calais Campbell and you're 6'8". But the way people have responded to his return, I think is remarkable. I mean, as much as we love Calais, and nobody loves the big guy more than yours truly, and we did the Big Red Rage for 4 years with him, I am truly amazed how people have embraced Calais Campbell again. And so, and we know the locker room is definitely a fan. Now, here's back to reality TV real quick. Quarterback 2 on Netflix. If we're looking for some summer viewing during the big heat, Burrow, Goff, and Cousins. Kirk Cousins on Quarterback 2? Really? Netflix? He is QB2. I mean, he's putting the 2
They probably didn't know that when they chose that.
I mean, he's putting 2 into QB2, although I guess in a sort of a salacious sort of way, right? I mean, I guess it's sort of interesting. How is he coping?
Yeah, season 2, July 8th. It's coming out on Netflix when they followed around the quarterbacks throughout the season, which I actually thought was really nicely done that first season.
Look, it'll be very neat to see how he handled the benching, go with Michael Penix taking over. The trailer showed a lot of, really important things. I thought they showed was a Jared Goff talking about competing against the Detroit Lions again and how he left the franchise. Joe Burrow and his house got broken into, and you get to see the raw reactions from him. This is reality TV that you and I could get cultured by and get into.
I do think seeing from the perspective, like being inside with Jared Goff and the year that the Lions had, and just the way that they completely rejuvenated a city that has not seen that type of success, that type of camaraderie and community in a very long time. You know that Paul used to live there. I think that's going to be really exciting to see from this perspective.
The one playoff game they won with Barry Sanders, I mean, the Silverdome almost just came apart. It was unbelievable, the atmosphere in that building.
Could you guys ever see Kyler Murray doing something like this? I don't know that I could ever see him being interested in, maybe.
Although we had all those cameras around him during the softball, and there have been other things where, I mean, he has had some experience.
Look, but you're not just bringing in, yourself. You're bringing your family, your teammates. Yeah. You have to make sure that there's a lot of people that got to be on board for something like this.
You know where where else the cameras are? And I found this out sort of the hard way, Tight End University. Because I went into Twitter and I searched TEU because I was looking for, McBride and so forth. You know what instead I got? I got 400 videos of Taylor Swift with Travis Kelce at Tight End U. And then
she's in attendance?
Now all my algorithms are Taylor Swift because it thinks I was searching for Taylor Swift at Tight End U. No, Taylor Swift was not the headline at Tight End U.
It's okay, Paul. You could say with your chest that you're a Swiftie at heart. Look, I think the Tight End University, it's a great concept that Travis Kelce and Greg Olsen and George Kittle all run. It's something that Trey McBride has taken part in the past, and now he brought along Elijah Higgins and Tip Ryman with him, which I think for the tight end room as a whole is going to be really helpful for Elijah Higgins, who's still only going to his 3rd season playing the position. So he's continuing to learn the ropes, and Tip Ryman going into his second season. What tight end U and Sack Summit in Las Vegas is also happening. Darius Robinson, Calais Campbell, and B.J. Ojolari are going to be in attendance. You're working with your peers, sharing some tips and tricks about stuff that you could bring to the table. But then again, Dan, you have to be very careful because these are still your rivals. These are still your opponents.
Yes and no, but I do think this is fun. We're at the point of the offseason where everyone's workouts, their programs with the team officially is done, so everyone's kind of taking vacation, and while a lot of people earlier in the offseason choose to do their individual community efforts, this is the time when you can do things as the Brotherhood around the league. And the reality is like Calais Campbell is not going up against Max Crosby, right? So that does eliminate some of the, I don't want you to have my skill set. What's been nice to see, and this might not be new to the Brotherhood of the league, but it has become a lot more clear to fans, given, social media and platforms, is just how tight that community is, and how even though they play for different teams and everyone wants to win, it seems like everybody wants to help each other and want to help the position grow.
Paul, I saw a video from Tight End University. I believe it was George Kittle and Travis Kelce were on stage, and they said to everybody, we have a concert and we're sponsored by Bud Light, so drink up. Remember, we have practice at 8:45, but we also have
right.
IVs. I feel like that right there is winning
right.
behavior.
That's Pro Bowl-esque back in the day when they used to go to Hawaii. It's the 8:45 really became 9:30 when practice started back at the Pro Bowl, and then the coaches like Ditka would just end practice after 5 minutes because he had a tea time. So, but I do like seeing Darius Robinson and B.J. Ojolari among all the luminaries, right? I mean, if nothing else, gives them that little extra added motivation to, not only do the best, in terms of trying to elevate the Cardinals, but elevate their own career and be considered among the elite at the position. That can't do anything but just provide added motivation, I would think.
I saw last year was Darius Robinson's first year at the Sack Summit. Obviously, he came in. There was that photo of him in a stance working with Max Crosby, and I think that that's something that, a rookie coming to the league is very valuable. What I'm most encouraged by is that B.J. Ojolari is hopefully healthy enough to take part in something like this, which could potentially open up the door for training camp and where he's at.
By the way, I looked up the stat again. Braden Fisk, who was taken after Darius Robinson in the draft, and he had the benefit of a full rookie season as defensive lineman. He had 1 sack in his first 7 games, and then he had 7.5 sacks from weeks 8 through 17. So that would seem to indicate, okay, first half of your rookie year, you're learning, you're struggling, maybe flailing a little bit, getting some traction. But if you're a player, boom, the switch flips, and then you get really productive really quick. Now, Darius Robinson only got 6 games, and he admits the first 3 games kind of chicken with his head cut off, and they had to calm down a little bit. So if at some moment, I don't know, late September, early October, all of a sudden something switches with number 56 and he ends up being dynamic and really dominant, I would not be shocked with that. All right, let's go. Let's get it. I can see in your eyes we need to get some winning behavior.
I see you. Let's go.
Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
Well, we have a list. Definitely has not been winning at the list game. And there are plenty of lists out there, and we don't have time to go through all of them. But when you put out an all-quarter century team, and you put out your 53, and you post the best of the best at each position group, and the receivers are listed as follows: Randy Moss, Julio Jones, Marvin Harrison, Calvin Johnson, Terrell Owens, Justin Jefferson. And there's no mention of Larry Fitzgerald. Even when you get to the practice squad of Antonio Brown and Andre Johnson, you are remiss, and you have failed in your ESPN all-quarter century team.
Not winning behavior. Who would you take off that list to put Fitz on?
I would start with Terrell Owens. He had more drops in one game than Fitz had his entire career. So I would start with T.O. That'd be my start right there. Calvin Johnson, love him. What did he ever do in the postseason? Larry was at his best in the playoffs. Marvin Harrison, okay, but let's see. He played the entirety of his career pretty much with Peyton Manning. Have you looked at some of the quarterbacks Larry had to be productive with?
Those are all great points. So
there are at least 3. And by the way, Julio Jones was Larry's contemporary. Go ask Patrick P. Who's tougher to cover? Who's the more dynamic and better receiver? Larry was better than Julio Jones, both in their primes back in the day.
There's a lot of lists that when I listen to you guys discuss here on Cardinals Underground list, and I know how much Paul loves his list, there are a lot of moments where they're exactly like that. They're laughable.
Yeah.
But this is probably the biggest joke out of any that I've seen so far, because since 2000, Larry's first in nearly every statistical category compared to a lot of these people. Justin Jefferson has a lot of great potential. By the time we're in 2050, I wouldn't be surprised to see him on this list. But for right now, I think it's disrespectful. It's a lot of that, and I'm from the East Coast. I could pick it up that there's a lot of East Coast bias when you start to look at some of these teams. Where are the bigger media markets? Where are the fan base the rowdiest and the most controversial in a lot of ways? And those are the teams that a lot of the national pundits are looking at. The fact that Larry is not even mentioned on this list, and for whatever reason that is the case, no reason is going to make me convinced that he shouldn't be on it.
All right, Danny, you want to take the Florida Panthers, living large, having fun, the Stanley Cup. I'm not sure who threw that down there, but at least there was that video of the captain of the Panthers knocking on doors at 5 a.m. in his neighborhood.
Isn't that so great? Alexander Barkov, after they win the Stanley Cup and he's going, you can see it on the ring camera. That's how it went around. He woke up his neighbors. It was between like 3 and 4 in the morning, the night they had won the Stanley Cup. He's ringing their doorbell, knocking on their door, waking up his neighbors. You can hear the woman say like, hang on. He's waking up. He's coming down, to pretty much tell him, hang on. We're coming down to open the door for you. If there's a reason for your neighbor to be waking you up at that time of day, that is it. Absolutely. I love Stanley Cup celebrations. It is so fun when you have an interactive trophy, when you have the team and their pass around the Stanley Cup, and every year you see kids, 3-year-olds eating cereal out of the Stanley Cup, right? Or whatever it is, they're taking it on a boat. It's like when you have like a flat Stanley or something as a kid and you want to take it along for a ride and make sure it has a great day. The parades are always awesome. It's been fun to see how the Panthers have been celebrating.
It's the prettiest cup in all sports.
By the way, if you're eating or drinking anything out of the Stanley Cup, you might want to get a tetanus shot. Just saying.
At least one.
At this point, that's good. All right, and then autograph scalpers.
Yeah, scalpers. So I was in Las Vegas over the weekend, and
of course you were.
I saw a group of a little bit of older people waiting outside by a nightclub. In the nighttime.
But wait a minute, I thought you were covering the SAC Summit. All right, we won't tell Darren. Go ahead.
That's going to be later this week. That's why we're going
okay.
back. No, I'm kidding.
I see. Interesting.
I'm kidding. I am kidding. But I saw a group of people that were out there, and it was all to get autographs from Lil Wayne. And Lil Wayne obviously is one of the greatest rappers of our lifetime, or at least of my lifetime. But the way I look at it is like, so a lot of these older dudes are out there. And then I was talking with one of our producers here, Matthew Vasky, and he brought up about how somebody went up to Jamar Chase on a plane. Jamar Chase was wearing a hoodie, had himself covered up, didn't want to clearly be recognized. Somebody recognized him, walked up and said, hey, can I get an autograph? Jamar Chase said no. And the guy says, hey, everybody, this is Jamar Chase over here. He refused to sign an autograph and basically shamed him for not signing an autograph. I think it's going to be awesome when we're going to be at the red-white practice and you're going to see a lot of diehard Cardinals fans that are going to be asking for that autograph from Calais Campbell and a lot of the other people. But then again, the kids deserve it too. And I think it's when you have the older adults that are out there and are making this to sell it again, kind of like ticket scalpers, which is why I wrote it as that. Not winning behavior. I was a little turned off by that.
I guarantee that Jamar Chase, once upon a time, used to sign autographs on a plane. Okay, but then what happens?
Everybody shows up,
and the next person, and the next person. I mean, there's
You're
just
delayed.
Yes. So I mean, come on, people.
There's a time and place, and you know what? Whether or not you want to hear it, whether or not you like it, athletes, celebrities have every right, especially when you are not there as an athlete, you're there as a person, a human being. They have every right to say, you know what, I'm going to, keep my privacy right now. Especially a lot of people will say that and still take a picture. You have to be able to respect that boundary.
I think
they don't know you anymore.
Of course, and I think it's a difference though between somebody who has a photo versus 40 photos taped up on a poster board.
For sure.
Clearly those are going to be the people that are reselling. I know Kelsey Plum. She was going onto the team bus. She's a WNBA superstar, and there were a group of people outside the hotel. She walked up to them and was kind of like, don't you think this is a little bit weird that, you guys are grown adults camping outside our hotel? And I think that's something that the WNBA is going to learn a lot as the sport continues to grow.
You can tell when they have dozens of pictures, the blue Sharpie. You can tell it's not being genuine.
All right, so we're going to put that guy on the power poll of incompetence, okay? Ineptitude. So just to recap some of the recent entries, Zach, for you, there was a survey. Some 71% of Americans in a recent survey said they have to repurchase items they already own because clutter in their own house keeps them from finding the original. People, 71% of Americans. We've had the jet fighters fall off aircraft carriers. That definitely made the list. There was this story, Wall Street Journal, that a study found there's a surprising reason why some shoppers refrain from buying healthy foods. The healthier the food, they say, the faster it goes bad. Or so people think. It's not really true. But maybe because you didn't get to the healthy food and you started by eating the cookies and the chocolate and other things, maybe that's why your healthy food went bad in your refrigerator. But here's the latest one. Dani, this one's for you.
Wait, where's Raygun?
Raygun has been on there. Yeah,
Okay,
Raygun's
good.
brother's been on there for financial fraud. So that's but the latest is this headline. Drinks in glass bottles have more microplastics than plastic bottles.
Huh?
The level of microplastics, a French study found, is higher in glass bottles than in other containers. They describe this as a, quote, surprising finding.
So what should we be drinking out of?
The Food Agency of France said glass bottles of cola, lemonade, iced tea, and beer have at least 5 times the amount of particles than plastic bottles or cans. How could that possibly be?
I just keep staring at these cups that are
How
here.
could that
So
possibly
those
be?
are only for decoration. Do not drink out of those glasses,
They
Paul.
better just be
Especially
for
they've been in a
decoration at
garage
this rate.
since 1988.
Once again, okay. What's the bigger risk, drinking out of the Stanley Cup or drinking out of a glass that hasn't been cleaned since
I'm
1988?
taking the Stanley Cup.
I would take the
I don't
Stanley
care what.
Cup
I don't care
regardless.
what. Yeah, I don't care what the risk is.
Okay. Well, that brings us full circle because remember, you can't drink from an empty cup. So refilling thy cup starts in 3, 2, 1. Summer vacay. Hope you enjoyed this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.